Welcome to Living Faith's Midweek Devotions. We are now in our fourth week of our subseries for Joseph called Divine Detours. And so we only have one more week after this. So we're closing up with Joseph, and I pray that all the details about Joseph's life and the words that God gives to us through Joseph's story has been speaking to you. And I know these last two devotions will speak to you too on Joseph before we begin our new series. Let's start with an illustration. Think about family reunion that you've been at or that you're looking forward to going to. Sometimes you look forward to them and sometimes you don't. Maybe it's been months or years since you've seen someone you love. So you count down the days, you make plans, you wonder what you'll talk about when you finally see each other again. But then there are family reunions, like I mentioned earlier, that you would just rather avoid and not go to at all. Because sometimes family history is complicated, isn't it? Sometimes there are old wounds, words that were said, things that were done, betrayals that haven't been forgotten. And that's exactly where we find Joseph and his brothers in chapters of Genesis 42 through 45. So those 4 chapters. I encourage you to read those 4 chapters. I'm not going to read through them there now, but read through them this week. And that will help you prepare for what we're going to study this coming Sunday. If you've been following along with our Divine Detours series, you know Joseph's story. His brothers hated him. They sold him into slavery. Joseph was taken to Egypt, where he experienced years of hardship before God raised him up to become second in command over the land, not just Egypt, but really the whole world, because everybody had to come to him for food. Now this famine has come. Joseph's brothers need food. They're coming from Canaan. And guess what? Where they have to go? They have to go to Egypt. They have to report to Joseph. They have to bow down to him, just like his dreams many years ago prophesied. Brothers walk into Egypt expecting to meet a powerful Egyptian official. They have no idea that they're standing face to face with the brother they betrayed and sold into slavery. Joseph recognizes them immediately, but they don't recognize him. And suddenly, all those years of pain come rushing back. Can you imagine what Joseph must have felt? Anger, hurt, grief, maybe even the temptation to make them pay and get back. After all, Joseph has the power now. They're at his mercy. And yet, what unfolds over these 4 chapters is one of the most beautiful stories of forgiveness and reconciliation in the entire Old Testament. But it doesn't happen instantly. Joseph doesn't simply say, no big deal, forget about it. Instead, God begins exposing what is happening in the brothers and their hearts. And one brother in particular begins to stand out. That brother was Judah. Years earlier, Judah had participated in selling Joseph to the Midianites, the Ishmaelites. But now, when Benjamin's life is threatened, that's the youngest brother, younger than Joseph, Judah steps forward. He tells Joseph that he will stay in Benjamin's place. Think about the change. The brother who once helped sacrifice Joseph is now willing to sacrifice himself for Benjamin. Something has happened in Judah's heart. And that's what God's grace does. Grace doesn't just forgive us, grace changes us. Then comes the moment we've been waiting for. Joseph finally tells them, I am Joseph. His brothers are terrified, and you can understand why. They know exactly what they deserve. But listen to Joseph's words. He says, do not be distressed, because all of this took place. You're selling me even into slavery and then me thrown into prison. It all happened because it was to save lives that God sent me ahead of you. Wow. Joseph doesn't excuse what they did. What they did was wrong. But Joseph can now see something they couldn't see. God had been working through the detour. They thought they were sending Joseph away. God was sending Joseph ahead. They thought they were destroying his future. God was preparing him to save lives. They thought the story was over. God was just getting started. And isn't that how often God works? We see the moment. God sees the whole story. We see the closed door. God sees what lies beyond it. We see the detour. God sees the destination. Now, that doesn't mean every painful thing that happens to us will eventually make perfect sense. Sometimes we may never understand why God allowed certain things to happen. Joseph's story reminds us that God is still working when we cannot see what he is doing. And nowhere is that more clearly demonstrated than at the cross. Think about Good Friday. The disciples saw Jesus betrayed, beaten, crucified, and buried. It looked like everything had gone terribly wrong. God was doing his greatest work. What looked like defeat became victory. What looked like death became resurrection. What looked like the end became the beginning of our salvation. And that's the hope we carry into this week's message. Maybe you're walking through a detour right now. Maybe you're dealing with someone in your family that has never been resolved. Something, some problem, some relationship. Maybe you're carrying guilt from something you did years ago. Maybe someone hurt you and you don't know how to forgive. Maybe you're facing circumstances that simply don't make sense. Joseph's story reminds us God is not finished with your story. He can change hearts. He can heal relationships. He can redeem painful chapters. He can take what others meant for evil and use it for his good purposes. Most importantly, he has already demonstrated all of his love for you through Jesus. So as you prepare for worship this Sunday, I want you to carry one thought with you. You may not understand the detour, but you can trust the one who is leading you through it. Joseph couldn't see the whole picture when he was sitting in the pit. He couldn't see it when he was being carried away to Egypt. He couldn't see it in prison, but God was working, and God is still working. So wherever you find yourself today, trust him. Bring your hurt, bring your guilt, bring him your unanswered questions. And remember, God may not explain every detour, but he will never abandon you in the journey. I look forward to being together this Sunday as we explore Joseph's family reunion and discover what happens when God turns guilt into grace, brokenness into reconciliation, and a painful detour into part of his better plan. Until then, may the Lord give you faith to trust him, not just when you can see where the road is going, but especially when you can't. See you next week.